everyone. Welcome to Her Story Matters. My name is Beatriz Chichi, and today I'm joined with Marhaba Ali, my co-host. And for our guest this week, we have three women from literally across the world. We have Luiza at Stanford University in California. We have Isabela Prata at Northwestern University in Chicago and Isa Taranto at the University of Toronto in Canada. So we asked Luiza, Isa, and Bibi to join us today in our podcast, not only because they're amazing, smart, and talented women who are now in some of the world's best universities, but also because before they entered university, while they were in high school, they wrote a joint book about the experiences of Brazilian women in three very different time periods in Brazil. And today they're here to share with us their experience in writing that book, and since they moved to college as three very young authors and three Brazilian girls. Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
I would like each one of you to tell us about yourself. Where are you guys are at the moment, and how is life going on?
My name is Isabela, but everyone from high school knows me by BB. I'm at Northwestern currently in my third quarter, finishing my freshman year, and it's been amazing. Right now I'm at the sound booth in the library, it's my first time here. Very exciting. And just very happy to be here talking to you guys. I always love to talk to you, and I love to talk about the book. So very special opportunity for me.
So I'm Isa. It's very similar name to Isabella, but just that first half. I'm currently in Toronto, in Canada, and I'm also finishing my first year of university right now. I'm going through finals season, so it's been a little bit stressful, but hopefully I'll make it through. And yeah, also very, very excited to be here and very excited to talk about this book, which is something that I don't get to do as often here as I did back home.
My name is Luiza. I'm currently at Stanford. It's also the beginning of the quarter, just like BB, because we're in a quarter system. And it's warm right now because it's spring, and so I'm so happy. And yeah, I'm going to be staying here over the summer doing research. So yeah.
I just saw that our old high school published something about Luiza, and I was like, this girl.
This is still a big flex for our school. They still want to flex on her.
Yeah, they're like, let me use my rights to publish this girl's accomplishment for the next year. What was it that you did, Luiza? Sorry, it slipped my mind now.
Oh, it was this machine learning competition. We had to do a little model to identify birds, and my group had the best model. And so we won this award. They didn't give us any prize, but
just the recognition. No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So how did the idea of writing a book together begin?
Talking about this idea of writing a book together, and we knew we wanted it to be focused on beauty standards. And to connect our stories, we decided we would have a piece of jewelry, because what says more about beauty standards than a piece of jewelry that goes through generations, through multiple women. And we wanted it to be a piece of jewelry that represented women. And we started researching animals that represented women. We went through spiders.
Black widow.
Through a few spiders. Yeah. Just brainstorming, and each of us in our computers looking at what this pin, it ended up being a pin. We didn't know if it was going to be a necklace or an earring, but it ended up being a pin. Would be, what image we would bring to it. And we found the dragonfly, which is the literal translation. Libélula means dragonfly, which we thought was beautiful and delicate, but also not too feminine. The dragonfly is just all around. And it felt perfect. So we had this document called Dragonfly Pin Brainstorm, where we would put all of our ideas, and initially was just libélula, singular, but because we were writing about three different women, we decided to make it plural.
I was just going to add that it's quite beautiful that the dragonfly pin is an object, right? And often women are very objectified, but then there's a symbol of dragonfly, which represents freedom in a way and transformation. And so it's like this duality that, throughout time, it's like women did gain more freedom, but it's kind of like this illusion of freedom, because women are still objectified and suppressed in society many ways. And so there's also that imagery that we wanted to get across in the book.
Yeah. And do you guys want to tell just to our viewers that maybe don't speak Portuguese and can't read the book just yet because maybe the translation is coming soon, hopefully. But would you guys like to explain the 3 stories that the book tells?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. Mine is the first part. It's about this woman called Naiala. She's in the 1850s, so she's a slave. And she's a domestic slave to this really rich men, and it's basically her experiences navigating that, and then the abolition of slavery and how they all transition through that. And it's most of the female characters are inspired by actual women that lived in the time that accomplished great things. So like a slave that was able to go to school or start a school and be a teacher. It's basically like many years during slavery and her kind of being able to regain her freedom. And I focus a lot on abolitionist movements, because I think when people think of the abolitionist movement, they're like, oh, the princess, this white savior figure helped them all. But I wanted to focus on Black people, how the Black slaves at the time struggled a lot to have their freedom. So yeah, it's basically about that.
Perfect. Let's go to the next story of the book. Who is Cecília?
Cecília, a big shift from the time period that Lu wrote about. I wrote about the 1970s, around the Brazilian military dictatorship, which was obviously a very difficult period for Brazilian history. I wrote about Cecília, who was a young girl forced to drop out of school and rushed into a very humiliating marriage. Some of the themes we explored were the power dynamics between Cecília and her husband, who was a lot more rich than her, some expectations regarding her image, her movement to find her own voice and her own freedom. And it just goes around her story in that marriage, her relationship with her husband, with her mother, with her sister, and with herself, and her participation in the movement of resistance during dictatorship.
And who is Dandara?
That's a tough name. Yeah, Dandara is is the character that I wrote, and she's a modern woman. So we're in 2023, another big time jump, and she's trying to go into politics and become a municipal councilwoman, I think is how you'd say that in English. But so it talks a little bit about her struggle with her image, especially in the context of being taken seriously as a politician. And also I went a lot into generational trauma and how families and the relationship between relatives can impact the self-perception of a girl and of a woman. And so that's a theme that I love reading about generally in stories. And so I wanted to include that as well. And so, yeah, that's basically the main themes of this part. And she's trying to navigate a world that doesn't necessarily recognize her as a meritable politician.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that Marhaba cried to the part of Dandara.
Yeah, I think I read a very short summary of it from Amazon. Her story is very interesting, going after a career that even she's not sure that she really wants to pursue this career. That reminded me of myself, and I really want to do journalism. Yeah, but still, when I was younger, I had other visions, and then this decision was shaped by the incidents and difficulties that I had in my life.
And I wanted to ask Isa, I would maybe it's just my brain in public health policy in the US now, but reading that story, what came to mind was kind of, the unseen effects of going through with a pregnancy that you're not ready for. Or I don't know if you guys already heard about Let's Talk About Kevin, I think it's the name of the book, but it's basically about compulsory maternity and what kind of the lack of love and the unpreparedness of a young mother to have a child can lead to. So I just wanted to ask, is that something that you thought about when writing that book, abortion rights, public health safety for women, especially in times we are right now, in which that literally is hanging by a thread in the US and following trends, maybe the rest of the world?
Yeah. I remember it was a long process for us, deciding to write this book and starting to do research and everything. And I remember it kind of coincided with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And that's, for me at least, when I first encountered a lot of questions about abortion rights and whether that was possible. at all, because in Brazil, that's not really allowed in most cases. And so it's not something that I had thought much about before that. And so that kind of like opened a lot of questions for me of how like the expectation to be a mother and to be a good mother can also impact the relationship between a mother and a daughter. And so definitely there's a connection there between like what we see in the world today and the book, because I think this book, not only my part but the other ones as well, is very informed by what we see in Brazilian society and like the enduring effects of like a patriarchal culture and the just the enduring effects of prejudice against women in general. And so definitely I think it's a book that's very informed by that context.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I kind of thought when I was reading it is the research you guys had to do to write that kind of novel, because for some context, it's quite literally impossible to live through, like the 1850s. So I wanted to ask also, what was that like? What kind of research did you guys have to go into? Because to write a book that's this strong and that's so based on I would say historical context from Brazil, how did you guys go about that?
Yeah, it was a lot of research, even for things that you wouldn't normally expect. Like we have to research like very, very specific things, like, the materials that are available at that time. I tried to gather a lot of like actual journals and newspapers from the time, especially newspapers that featured people like selling slaves and kind of trying to mimic that language. But yeah, I had a document of like over 30 pages of research and notes of things that I could gather, and a lot of historical figures that existed that I kind of wanted to mirror my characters on, because I wanted to create like the biggest like diversity of types of women and men in that time. So yeah, it was a lot of research for sure.
And I'd like to read a poem actually. And I took the poetic liberty to put it on ChatGPT for it to translate. This poem is from BB. She wrote it and she published it on the Daily Hawk. Wow. Shout out.
Oh my God.
And I'd like, after I read it, I would just like you to kind of explain where it came from. She likes mirrors, watching her reflection dance. She likes painted nails, but never red. Red is vulgar. Hair ribbons since always, ribbons in her head forever, holding close to her heart the plastic baby. She was GIFTED at 4 years old. She is, knowing she is woman, and woman is girl, she is. Knowing how to smile at those she loves, knowing how to smile at those she hates, knowing how to smile at strangers. She is braces with chewing gum, a mouth held shut, better that way. Change that skirt, sweetie, your uncles will say something. Who wears makeup to a Sunday barbecue? She no longer likes mirrors, no longer likes seeing herself cry in front of them. Woman is no longer girl, she is young lady. Woman is obligation, obliged to open the door, obliged to pay the bill, obliged to say, thank you for teaching me so much I didn't know, darling, obliged to stay silent. Young lady becomes woman. Woman is surrender, under the weight of a body that demands, a voice that demands, a love that demands. Being a woman is being a choice and having no choice. Woman is to create, procreate, travel, desire, is mother, is family, is ask your father. She is an old photograph resting on the nightstand beside the double bed, showing a smile that no longer exists. Woman is mourning, mourning what was and what could have been, mourning for so much struggle, mourning for the little girl who never got a burial or flowers after she left. Woman is death, thinking of old lovers while scrubbing the stove, the one who is victorious over all those who never were, defeated only by the one who will be. Woman is nameless and sometimes storyless, but always woman.
This is so special to me. I could cry hearing you recite my poem in a different language. It's so special. The idea for this poem came from the little things in the female experience that we kind of let slide, but that I think are devastating. Mm-hmm. So when the little sentences about change your skirt, ask your father, that kind of thing, that's in our everyday lives, right? I think every single day we go out into the world and we have some sort of microaggression that we just let slide. And if you put that all together, it's just really, really sad. And I think we have to talk about it. So I wrote that poem based on a book that I read called O Peso do Pássaro Morto. Very, very good book by Aline Bay. And the woman in that book has no name. And we have about 250 pages of her story without her being named. And that made me want to write a poem about how sometimes women just go through life without being recognized. And yeah, that's kind of the idea behind Ibelos as well. Just talking about these little things that are actually huge, and we just let them go by without saying anything. Raise your hand if you haven't been told to change your clothes at least once, because someone would say something, you know? And I feel like it's just a common experience. And over time, it does get you. It wears you out.
Your early 20s, even like at 19, because I think when you spend your whole adolescence kind of getting taught that being polite is the right way, and you come into university and then it's just you by yourself, an international student, your parents aren't here anymore for the first time in your life, and people start doing that and there's no one to defend you because your friends that have been your friends for the past 15 years aren't there anymore to kind of have your back regardless of what happens. It's just you by yourself, and that kind of starts happening. You see how vulnerable you actually are to it. That's when it starts to get like there's something to be done. And that's partly why we made this podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's important to talk about this, because how many times have men said, oh, feminism is useless because sexism doesn't exist in this world anymore. But every single day that keeps happening. And I think we had Fauzia Kufi and Mitra Kutb in our podcast, and they're both activists for women's rights in Afghanistan. And I think someone that I was talking to this about said prejudices happen everywhere. The difference is that in some places they're shoved in your face. But just because they aren't doesn't mean it's less dangerous. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But
no, but you're right. It's way too normalized. Thank you for sharing my poem.
Thank you for writing. That poem is so beautiful. During the writing of this book, has there been anything in particular that pops out to you as something that you lived through and that you can connect to the character because of your shared experiences?
I mean, there's always going to be a little bit, you know? Not in any specific situations, but just the way that our characters are expected to behave. In a way, it's eternal, right? There's this expectation that women are going to be polite and understanding and compliant, regardless of their context. So there's, of course, different levels. I'm not trying to say that we lived through the same context that they did, because we definitely don't. But, you know, when you're writing about a woman who is concerned by how people will see her and she wants to look beautiful because she's scared of mean comments, every girl has been through that. So there is a lot of us in our characters, I would say, but there's also a lot of every single woman in our characters. That's what we tried to do, at least.
Something I was thinking about is how the story of these women is connected to the story of the women of their family. So their sisters and their mothers and their ancestors and even their friends. So their chosen family, I guess you could say. And I think that's something that kind of resonates with me a lot. Again, we don't live through the same experiences as these characters do, but I do see a lot of my grandmothers and my mother and my sister and my friends and my co-authors in myself. And that's something that I like thinking about, because it makes me feel like I'm kind of a collection of a lot of other people. And that's something that I think we collectively try to explore in this book as well.
Yeah, and like I think I said before, my character I was trying to get a lot of really powerful women figures at the time to kind of create her. And something that I recently discovered was that my great-great-grandmother was also in like a similar position. She was also a slave, and she was also sold to like a Portuguese man. And it's really interesting to keep hearing these stories. My mom just told me a bunch of stories about her, and about like connecting back to your beautiful poem, BB, about the nameless part. Like, you know, we don't know the last name of my great-great-grandmother. And it's, my mom also told me like the story about her that she didn't want the people that her sons like marry, like the woman, to have the traditional like black hair. She wanted them to have like smooth and, you know, hair, because, you know, beauty standards and Eurocentric standards are so enrooted, even if, if she was Black herself and she had that kind of hair. So it was really interesting to hear that story and see so like many women, even like from your own families, into the characters that we wrote. That was really special.
And talking about beauty standards, I feel like we're kind of going back in time, because for the past maybe 10 years, in my adolescence, I was a huge, as you guys might know, I was like really outspoken about social issues, particularly body positivity, women's rights, that kind of thing. And we've been working for a while to people have been working for a while to kind of reshape the narratives that we've been hearing since we were little. And now, specifically 2024, 2025, we've been seeing kind of that movement in reverse. So skinniness is back, apparently, and extreme skinniness being very, very thin. And I remember growing up in Brazil, the beauty standards was quite literally the opposite. For me, I wanted to go to the gym to have like a specific kind of body that was definitely not super skinny. And now we're going back to that again. Straight hair, specific kind of makeup, specific kind of clothing, specific kinds of kind of showing yourself to society. And it's a bit scary. I don't know if you guys have seen that as well on social media.
Yeah, on Instagram, my free page, it's people with like such tiny waists. How is that physically possible? But yeah, I mean, like bodies are seen as like this fashion trend and they keep changing over time. And it's really terrible. I mean, like many years ago, the standard was to be more curvier, like to be like not as skinny, because if you had more weight, that means like you were healthy, you had like money to buy more food. And now it's like the opposite. You have like money to, do surgery or go to the gym a lot, have like a nutritionist and have like these really, really healthy products. But yeah, it's just like, now it's sad that it's seen as like this trend, and it's like your body standards, like they're going to keep changing. And if you're like really fixed on it, like you're never going to be happy because they're constantly changing.
I think I really like what you said about the body becoming like a fashion accessory, because it's impossible for you to maintain the same body shape forever. And right now, for example, people are praising having a smaller chest. And then we see these celebrities that put implants to get a bigger chest, removing the implants because now having a smaller chest is in. And you can't live like that. That's a really sad prison, to make your own body a fashion statement. It's very, very toxic. And I feel like it's a pendulum, right? We swung into the body positivity. We were there for a very, very short period of time and people immediately rejected it. And it's very sad.
A lot of women are trying Ozempic. I know a lot of women that I know, they're trying Ozempic, for example, and they want to get skinny, but they don't care about the side effects that medicines like Ozempic have. Hormonal side effects, a lot of other side effects.
Yeah, because again, I like even in Reels, Instagram, like racist jokes are back, apparently. Homophobic jokes are back. Yeah. And I swear to God, I don't understand it, because I feel like I've spent the last 7 years like fighting anyone who did them. And now people from my high school that I used to know, they were like, oh, remember your activist era? And I'm just like, it's just because now it's normalized again.
It's a mindset.
It was normalized when I was a child, then it changed apparently, and then now it's back again. And I know that if I say that, people will be like, oh my God, you're so annoying. It doesn't make much sense.
I feel like at the same time that we were fighting against these kind of comments, there were people fighting just to make them normalized. I feel like they were just fighting to be able to be prejudicial and fighting to be able to be hateful. And, it seems like they got it, and we can't let that happen. We have to keep speaking out against it. We have to keep saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say that the experience of writing this book for me was very freeing in that regard. Like, it helped me a lot with like comparison and social media and body image things, because I just realized that there's so many different ways of being like a Brazilian woman. There's so many different ways you can look that like doesn't make you more or less of a woman. Like you're still like, that identity is still very much within yourself. Doesn't matter how you look. And so I think the experience of writing this book was very, very good in that regard as well, because it helped me see that, like, just there's so many things that we need to be focusing on, so many social issues that we need to be fighting for, that I personally don't want, like, my self-perception to be more skewed than society's perception of me already is.
Yeah, so was there any controversy in relation to your book?
There was there was controversy regarding my part, because women back then, if women that were slaves, if they discovered they were pregnant, they did not want to have more children be in the condition of slaves. And so what they would do is that they would get an abortion. And so I briefly had a scene where that happened. I don't think it was very like explicit or very like graphic in my opinion. But then apparently, someone noted that there was this scene, and that kind of limited where we could like distribute the book.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we became real friends because of this. At least on my part, because I was new to school. You guys were already friends. But we just all bonded over the fact that we wanted to talk about female beauty standards. And we ended up writing this paper/presentation about American beauty standards and misogyny, in which each of us had a specific lens to research. Luiza did historic, I did economic, and Isa did political. Yes. Is that correct? And then we brought many elements from our research into the key ideas of the book, which is why we decided to include beauty standards in all of the stories. And we just felt like we had so much from the few months of research that we made that we put into this presentation. We just wanted somewhere to let it out creatively. Yeah. So originally, when the idea to write a book started, it wasn't going to be a fiction novel. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, it was going to be inspired by economics.
It was going to be like an analytical piece of writing where we would talk about our research, kind of like Freakonomics, but then Luiza really wanted it to be fiction.
I was going to say it's because it would be more fun to write a fiction piece. And I thought that was the initial idea that you guys had. And I feel like there would be so much more research that we would need to do in the little amount of time that we had to do a book like Freakonomics. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm glad we did.
I like that younger girls have talked to us about having read this book. And I know that if we had published an analytical book full of research, they wouldn't really be interested in it. So I felt like it was more accessible to a younger population, which, to be frank, are the people that need to be most impacted by feminism, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there was this young girl from 6th grade, 7th grade, who did a drawing for each of our characters and gave it to us, and I still have it in my room.
Very wholesome moment.
Yeah. It's very special. It's at the same time, like, it's very terrifying, but also very special to see that the work we put out, like, people are actually reading it. Like, I don't know, for me, I was so detached, like, after we launched the book and like started selling it and distributing it, I just couldn't grasp the idea that people were actually going to sit down and read the book.
Yeah.
And so it was a very positive surprise when we started seeing the feedback, and from people that we weren't expecting, like the 6th, 7th grade girl who we didn't really have any ties with, but she just came up and gave us drawings of our characters. So it was very, very nice. And although our initial research started with the American beauty standards, we just, during the research process, I remember just seeing a lot of parallels to the Brazilian experience. And so I think that kind of also led us to want to explore the Brazilian experience and our reality as impacted by those beauty standards too.
And how has the distribution been going? What are the plans for the book? Are you guys planning on selling it to any place in particular? Are you guys planning on disseminating it in another way, maybe through social media, maybe through other podcasts that you may be invited to? What's the plan, basically?
So we tried to contact some libraries in Belo Horizonte, and a lot of people here, because I talk about this book anytime I can to the people here, they're like, "Oh, can I read it?" And like, "Oh, if you know Portuguese, I guess you can read it." They're like, "When will it be translated?" And then I'm like, "Oh, I don't I don't know." So maybe our next step should be to translate the book. So
it's interesting that we published this book in Portuguese right before a huge life shift into an English-speaking country for all of us. So now in our new settings, people that surround us can't read it the way it is, which, you know, it was intended to be a book in Portuguese because it's about Brazilian women, but I do wish that we could share it.
As a non-Brazilian, I wanted to know what are some of the stereotypes about women in Brazil that you guys don't like, or like you guys think that they're very wrong?
that were very, very like loud. They sexualize Brazilian women a lot. I think that's a big thing that like we're easy, I guess, would be the worst ones.
That were crazy.
Yeah. We don't have any manners.
Yeah.
I think just overall, Brazilian women are seen as playful and we're not taken as seriously. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's so incorrect, just because Brazil has a warm culture and we care about each other and we express that doesn't interfere with us as professionals or our manners or our choices in life. But stereotypes are stereotypes.
The Barbie movie is coming into my head for some reason because I was just thinking, in any culture, as a woman, I feel like you could be a thousand different people and still people would still find a way to criticize you. So if you're too quiet for being from a certain culture, that's bad because you should speak your mind, because how else would you stand up against yourself? But if you're too loud, you don't want to interfere with men's space or whatever. And I think it's always hard to find that balance because there's none. And like, whose lyric is it? Because that wasn't my TikTok. It's like, the perfect balance is to be a man.
I don't know, but it's correct.
That is, yeah.
Guys, is there anything else that you guys want to add to your book or something that you guys want to talk about before we wrap up?
I think being here and talking about our book in a podcast that to me has the same ideals as our book is very special.
I thought it was a lovely book. I thought it was a really, really good book.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. This was lovely.
Thank you so much for having us.